Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's really, really haunted, Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's haunted, the podcast. Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's really, really haunted, Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's haunted, the podcast.
So sweet. Welcome back to Hollywood's Haunted, the podcast. Hollywood's Haunted, the podcast. I'm already looking away from the microphone, trying to take my notes. If you listen to the previous episode, our first one, you'll probably notice that this might sound a little bit better. That's just because we're amazing. And
professionals here.
We just correct like madmen. Also, I'll be adding the Hollywood's Haunted theme song to all of this, so let's just pretend we just heard it. Oh my gosh. That was amazing. That was the best theme song I've ever heard. I can insert sound effects and stuff.
There you go.
Oh my god, that explosion that just happened outside of the home.
Is that gunfire?
6 planes just flew. But yeah, welcome back. I'm here with Jameson Carbino.
Hi, everybody.
Not Carbano. Yeah, welcome back. How was your week? What did you do?
Had a good time, my friend, doing a lot of research for this. Finding some cool ghost stories online and just listening to what people say when they are trying to explain how their experience went. You know, it's fun. Sometimes you get some really good stories. Sometimes you just kind of get middle of the road blah stories. But this has been fun trying to do research and
it's definitely interesting trying to research hauntings. Because mine doesn't specifically have a haunting per se that's written, you know.
Okay.
My location is one we actually had when, I don't know if I told you this, when we tried to do a haunted bike tour. We got a lot of like people that were interested, but riding a bike in Los Angeles at any time is incredible. I mean, you drive a motorcycle, so that's allowed to be on the road. We were riding bikes, so yeah, it was. Credit to James Roseboom for spearheading that thing that didn't work out.
Shout out.
But yeah, this was going to be a stop on our bike route because it's a little farther off than our Hollywood Haunted Tour walking ghost tour.
And the spot is where?
Basically like Selma. It's on Sunset Boulevard, but it goes far back to Selma. And it's been, what was the address? Actually, let's just get into it.
Yeah.
It's actually called the Crossroads of the World.
Okay.
If you live in Hollywood or know of Hollywood, you might have seen it, but you probably drove right past it because it's been dilapidated for quite some time.
Now that has the iconic spire, right?
Yeah, it's a 55-foot tall spinning globe.
There you go.
And it was designed by Robert V. Dara, and it is actually, the whole design is what a late branch of Art Deco that's called Nautical Deco. Which, it makes sense that that's what it's called, but it also makes sense when you look at the design. It looks like a boat on the top,
okay.
And then they have, like, Art Deco is supposed to be, very streamlined, edges, sharp type stuff, but this was a little bit more curvier, and seafaring imagery was, definitely prominent.
Interesting.
But it was mostly because it was the 30s, and sea travel was kind of prominent at the time,
okay. A lot of shipping and stuff,
right?
To Long Beach ports and whatnot.
Titanic. That should be one of our. We should do one. Actually, you should do that.
Oh, I would be all over that one.
Yeah, my next one is Titanic. Watch out. Not for the glaze of the iceberg, but for Jameson's story.
Yes.
So it was nautical deco because of the rounded edges and the outer buildings, because basically the whole area was a outdoor shopping mall.
Okay.
When it was originally created.
Little stores and kiosks and whatnot.
They had these giant bay windows and stuff that were supposed to be like advertising, what the shops had and stuff originally. This is
on Hollywood Boulevard, correct?
Technically it's on Sunset.
On Sunset,
but it goes far as back to Selma, so it's like a big block.
Right. About a block long.
About a block long, like a city block, yeah. But the outer buildings, they're more a European village. They have a medieval one, a Spanish one, an Oriental one, French, and then Cape Cod.
Okay.
From the land of Cape Coddia.
Okay.
Where the white man liveth in his
So
overpriced
are you saying that like each building represented a different style?
different style. Like, and it was supposed to be Ella Crawford, who was the creator of this. I think I actually just have the quote. Yeah, she wanted it to feel like you're taking a trip around the world.
Okay.
She also, I don't have this written down, but this was in one of the articles I read. But she actually supposedly drew a lot from the World's Fair, and she wanted to make this like like Disney wanted to do like a consistent World's Fair year round or whatever.
And this was originally built at what time? You said?
1936.
Okay.
Was when it was completed. Yeah, it started a few years earlier than that.
Construction started before 36.
Construction started, a few years before. They didn't have any really record on that, though. But yeah, she said it was a permanent World's Fair with a cosmopolitan atmosphere.
Okay. So the concept was that you walk into this open mall, and if you go to one side, you feel like you're in China. If you go to another spot, you feel like you're in France.
Mm-hmm. And they tried to like cater the shops and stuff, the retail stores that would, be in these certain areas.
Okay.
But I guess it only lasted for a certain time. Because Mrs. Crawford was the widow of an infamous man named Charles Crawford. Charles Crawford was known later on and throughout history to be a mobster to some people, or just a bad guy.
Now, for people out there that don't know what infamous means, that means that he's so famous that he's infamous. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure I got that right.
He is completely he is inside famous.
Got it. Okay.
But yeah, a little history on Charles Crawford before I jump into the story. It was 1900s. He was working in Seattle. He was operating a dance hall, actually, at the time. And then 1910, he started operating a bar, but it had a casino and brothel.
In LA?
This was in California.
California, okay.
It wasn't in Los Angeles. It was like Northern California. But that's where he met a few people, and then he basically created a lot of government, police connections. Most people claim that he was just an extremely savvy talker.
Okay. A shyster, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everyone thought of him as like, oh, he's like a upstanding guy, but everybody kind of knew behind the scenes what he did.
We know,
Charlie. But also, he was when he started getting all these connections and stuff, he would be the person to provide the heads up for business owners when they were conducting raids during Prohibition.
Oh, okay.
And then he created in 1921 what was called, I think by the newspapers, called him this, but it was known as the City Hall Gang. And that contained Mayor at the time George E. Cryer and prosecuting attorney Kent Kane Parrott.
Oh yeah, I know about him. He shows up in the Dahlia book.
The Dahlia book, that's right. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't even think about that until just now. Thank you for bringing that up. We'll be definitely talking about later on in the podcast. Not tonight, but in a few episodes later when I finish the goddamn book. But about Steve Hodel and the whole Black Dahlia story. But yeah, definitely Kent Kane Parrott. He ran the show. He was running the police, and through Crawford's connections with Mayor Cryer and Prosecutor Parrott, who ran the police, he was able to give these warnings to all these businesses.
So he was tipped off to go and let those guys and tip them off.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, kind of like a middleman. He also became known as the Grey Wolf of Spring Street. And that was because he was actually running a bar when he moved to LA. He was actually running a bar off of Spring Street in downtown LA.
Okay.
And I think he might have
illegal bar. This is during Prohibition.
I think every bar had a casino or a brothel, or it was the meeting of some secret society or something.
I see. So we're talking more speakeasies.
Exactly. Yeah.
Got it.
And the maskers from Bordner's were members of. Definitely members of his establishments.
I don't think I know what the maskers are.
Oh, okay. for our listeners, on Hollywood's Haunted Tours, at the end we go to Bordner's, which is a really cool old Hollywood bar, kind of hole in the wall at the time for sure. But Bordner's was definitely known for secret societies.
Okay.
They had tons of them there. And
So
Maskers was one, and Saints and Sinners was one.
These are
where they were
all secret societies?
Yeah, secret societies. Yeah,
okay.
that was kind of where their headquarters were. So whenever, like I said, whenever bootleggers and operators or other illegal operations of any kind would need assistance, the advice was always given, see Charlie about it. And that was actually a quote from the LA Times.
Interesting.
That apparently they'd interviewed several people about it, and that was always the notion. It was like, see Charlie about it. I wish I knew a see Charlie about it. Kind of, you know what I mean? I mean, maybe I don't.
Everyone needs a Charlie in their life, I think, you know?
I need a Charlie Crawford.
What do I do about this toilet? See Charlie.
See Charlie. Shit, I need to call Charlie, actually. It was interesting because although he was huge, apparently he was a giant dude. They didn't give actual descriptions, but everybody said he was very physically imposing. But he apparently had a very effeminate voice and an Adam's apple that would wander and bobble around uncontrollably. And so a lot of people think that this was kind of why he was kind of given the slip or the slide a lot of the times when he was, an investigator or something, because they'd be like, oh, this buffoon, to kind of like, he couldn't hurt a fly, it's like just a big teddy bear,
Interesting.
But apparently he was not. Apparently he was definitely a bad dude. But yeah, his notorious viciousness actually helped him take public corruption to its height in the 1920s. And that was also another quote from the LA Times. Most of this information is from the LA Times or LAist.com. LAist.com, they have a lot of cool LA history. Highly recommend checking that out.
LAist?
LAist. So it's like LA murderist or LA, just a bunch
of...
Oh,
okay, I got it.
Ists and isms. Isms. That's gonna suck editing. Ists.
There's a snake in the room.
So yeah, like I said, they called him the Grey Wolf of Spring Street. Good Time Charlie.
That's a name I've heard before.
Right, yeah. But yeah, a lot of people knew him also as a prominent local politician or an organized crime boss. He was
now. Did he actually hold a political office?
Local political office, yes. He was. I think it was some district. I think he was like
a representative of the district or something.
Shit, yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't. Yeah.
So he wasn't a mayor or something like that.
No.
Okay.
So yeah. So he was a bad dude, and so there was. Let's get to the incident. Because most people didn't know Crawford, unless they were in this industry, in one of these notorious industries back in the day. The public, I guess, didn't know Charles Crawford. It wasn't until he died that he became a public figure. And then, they investigated him.
So basically, all the muck came up after he died.
Exactly. Yeah. So he was actually shot. In his at his estate, actually, which is I think it's actually 666 something. Yes, located at 6665.
The neighbor of the beast.
Yes, neighbor of the beast. Right, the devil actually just walked in and was like, "I said turn it down," and shot him in the head.
Sorry, wrong house.
But so yeah, he and newspaper man Herbert Spencer, and he wasn't like the newspaper boy. He was like running a newspaper.
What do you know? What paper he was running?
I think I do somewhere. That's okay. I'll find it somewhere. Yeah, they were both apparently shot and killed there by former Deputy District Attorney David Clark.
David Clark murdered
Charles Crawford and Herbert Spencer.
Oh, okay. Two people.
Yeah.
Oh.
It was said to be self-defense.
Okay, that's what he claimed.
This is murdering a mobster, or organized crime boss, or and this district attorney.
Okay, so that was one of the guys with Parrot, right? He was one of the guys that was in there.
Well, yeah, they definitely said I don't remember that being brought up in the book yet. Specifically,
No, I'm
David
saying
Clark.
I'm sorry, because I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. So the two people that were murdered, one of the guys was one of the city councilmen that he had under his belt.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And David Clark was known as what did they? Handsome Dave.
Handsome Dave.
Was one they called him.
Now,
but he was also apparently he was district attorney, but he was obviously shady. Yeah.
Right, he's working with criminals and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the main guy, he was married to the woman that is the one who invented the crossroads.
Charles Crawford. Yeah.
Charles Crawford is
he
the
was
husband.
married to Ella. Yeah.
Got
Ella
it.
Crawford.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And so the murders and the trial were huge headlines, obviously, and this was 1931. But
he's murdered in 1931.
Yeah,
okay.
That's when both of them were murdered. Yeah,
and they were both in the same room, and
in the exact same room. Yeah, they were in basically in his office.
Okay.
And his office actually apparently it was described as having a. Where is it? Oh my god! Yeah, it was. I can't find it, but it was basically. They said that it was a desk with 4 phones on it and a panic button. That's all that was on.
That's all I was there. That's all I need.
But apparently, prosecutors were really not able to pin anything down on Clark because he was the witness.
It's his word against nobody.
It's his word against nobody. Yeah, exactly. And this is 1931, so there's it's not that we're way better off now, but there's obviously things that have happened to stop like
sure, you
like
have
this
gun
from
residue
getting away.
and
Yeah, exactly.
all sorts of ways,
cameras and all that shit.
Sure.
And, so they couldn't find witnesses or anybody with any previous information about the crime. So according to Rasmussen, who is I believe the person that wrote he was there at the trial and then wrote this because this was back when you couldn't, can't film trials and all that stuff. At his trial, Clark testified that both killings were in self-defense. Spencer was angry with him, he said, for using his judicial campaign as a platform for which to hammer those involved in local vice and graft. So, I guess Crawford was trying to be a judge. Crazy.
More power.
So aware of the bad feeling, Crawford had attempted to act as a peacemaker and invited Clark and Spencer to meet in his office. Fearing a trap, Clark stopped and bought a gun, overdrawing his bank account to make the purchase. At the meeting, Crawford tried to make a deal with Clark, asking for his help in framing the police chief and assuring him of a victory in the coming election. But when Clark refused and threatened to expose him, Crawford pulled a gun. Clark responded by drawing his own newly purchased weapon and shot both Crawford and Spencer to death. Or so he says.
Mm-hmm. That's convenient.
So convenient. Yeah, this is way too.
It wasn't me. It was the one-armed man.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's what was testified. You can kind of draw your own conclusions, but I mean these were.
But he was acquitted, yeah.
Yes, and apparently, Miss Crawford was actually present in the courtroom when he was acquitted. She had nothing to say.
Because she wasn't there to see it, correct?
No, yeah, but she didn't have any comment on it after he was acquitted. Everybody was kind of
her comment was no comment.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but everybody expected her to be this like crazy, wailing, flailing woman, which was looked down on or whatever at the time.
They were expecting her to make a scene.
Exactly.
She basically didn't.
And the another reason this was even on record that she didn't say anything was because this was one of the first trials that actually used a microphone.
Interesting.
And that's where they caught Clark, for the record, who ended up killing again in the 50s. Mm-hmm. And this time he killed a good friend's wife and after he was arrested, like 3 days later, he died of a heart attack in jail. So, I mean, I think we said this last time, but at least he died. You know, at least he died as well.
Interesting.
So many. I mean, everybody thought that the reason Ella Crawford created the Crossroads of the World was to kind of wipe away, you know, her previous life.
Any kind of stigma or whatever.
Exactly, yeah. And apparently he had like a good chunk of change.
So all of this happened before the Crossroads was even a thought.
Yeah, this was 1931, and Crossroads didn't happen until 36.
Okay, so now his office located in that area?
No, his office, was located at a different spot. Technically, it's the same property, but where his where that bungalow was, would basically be like a parking lot on the same area.
Okay.
Because after it happened, she didn't want anything, so she demolished it, and then they raised it and did this whole brand new shopping mall with it.
I see. So basically, the spot where her husband and another person was murdered, she decided to tear it all down and start over.
Yeah, and she
put in this world-friendly outdoor mall type thing.
And apparently, it was pretty big when it first started out. Opened on October 29th, 1936. It was a huge attraction. They had connections to local movie studios, so Ella was able to secure performers who were contracted to Universal, like Cesar Romero, Benny Barnes, Wendy Berry, Boris Karloff, Henry Armetta, Misa Auer, I don't know that French, and George Murphy.
Cesar Romero, huh?
Right, yeah.
That's Batman right there.
I mean, and Boris Karloff, that's the dude right there. I'm only listing those because those are the ones I know.
Do I know who George Murphy is?
I've
never heard that name, I don't think.
I'll show you a picture of him.
All right, fair enough.
You'll be like, oh, that dude. I don't know that dude.
GTS, right? GTS, Google that shit?
Google that shit. I didn't know there was an acronym for that. Fucking Dun, dun, dun. So yeah, that was the big complex. It originally housed 57 high-end shops, cafes, and bazaars, along with 36 offices above, and that was where like the ship thing is on the top. Apparently, the designer, he was actually the same guy who did the Coca-Cola bottling factory in downtown LA. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's kind of in like the industrial area now for downtown LA, but when I was working the Alita Battle Experience immersive thing,
yes,
which was way in the fucking buttfuck of downtown. Oh my god, that was kind of sketchy area. But that's where the Coca-Cola bottling center is.
All right.
But it's exact same design, you know. It's beautiful. It's really pretty. But it's kind of weird that it's in, that area.
Yeah.
Well, not really. I mean, at times.
Is that still working too? That company's still...
I think so. Yeah, I think it's still producing. Yeah. That's where I got that Coke that I got earlier.
All the way down to LA.
All the way
from
down.
The source. Only the best.
So yeah, after a few years, it changed hand. But in the 1960s, the Crossroads buildings there, because it wasn't all one thing anymore. It housed several tenants who were involved in the song poem music industry business. Have you ever heard of the song poem music? This was interesting. I actually looked this up. Have you ever heard of pay to play?
Yes.
Basically the same thing. But this was kind of like the original. In the back of magazines, lots of different types of magazines, there would be this little thing that's like, do you want to be a music artist? Send us this and we'll produce your record, and you could literally you could write down song lyrics and how you'd want the song to sound or whatever, and as long as you sent money with them, they would record it, using, studio musicians or whatever that could do 1,900 of these in a day. They would do all that, press it, on a record or however many you purchased or whatever, and then send it to you,
Oh, okay.
Kind of cool, because the thing they would say like, oh, we're going to send this out to all of our labels, radio stations, you're going to be on the charts, all this stuff. They don't tell you that they own a few labels. They put it on stations that are dead air channels that back then there were a lot of stations that had dead air. I mean, I don't know if you remember watching TV back in the day, and there was times where the TV was just not showing shit.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't anything to show, you know?
True, yeah.
So, like, back then they would get, like, 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. slots, you know, and where... I mean, when I worked for ARN, doing, like, we talked about doing radio and shit last time, when I did that, like, I got to put my radio station, or radio channel on for an hour, and it was, like, from 4 to 5 in the morning,
Sure.
you know? But that was also, like, I didn't have to get, like, I didn't have to pay for those, sponsorships or whatever and stuff.
Right.
So basically, yeah, song, poem, music industry, kind of a scam, Most of the people that sent music there were like, oh, I'm going to be big, because you would send them a song, it would be like, like, my Toyota is red or something, and they would send you back like, this is the best song we've ever heard. You are amazing. We're going to produce your record. This is going to, so they would fill you with all this, That's why people thought it was a scam. Because technically they didn't do anything else because, you know what I mean? Like,
so they weren't stealing the people's things.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. So it wasn't necessarily a scam technically.
Right.
But most of the people that were doing this were like, oh my God, I could be big,
Right.
And the reason, there was an article, I can't remember.
Basically, it's like a false hope industry.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
But the reason somebody found this out, or not found this out, but he did like this article about it because he was curious, and he sent in something like, my farts are purple or something like that. And they sent him that generic, you are a god.
Oh,
you write the best music ever. And
this
he's
is
like,
the best fart song we've ever heard.
He's like, no, this doesn't make sense.
Interesting.
And after he pressed his records, then he was like, this is stupid.
Interesting. So you could basically send a way for your music to be made professionally.
Right, yeah. Which is kind of cool. Like, when you think about it, because it was $400 back then to have your song put to an orchestra.
Wow.
I would pay $400 to do that right now.
But I mean, $400 back then, good lord.
That's true.
Looking at what, five grand easily?
$5 grand easy, yeah. But like thinking about it like that, like, oh, okay, like that's attainable now for some Joe Schmo.
Well, I mean, they kind of have a similar thing where you just go into that recording booth and you record your song and it pops out the CD. So I mean, it's
oh my god, yeah.
Basically
oh my god, I forgot about those.
I mean, you don't have an orchestra with it or whatever, but
Yeah, there's some. I mean,
same concept.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, now they have like algorithms and shit for that.
Now they also have Pro Tools. Do it at your house naked.
Pro Tools, we would totally accept a free version of Pro Tools. Pro Tools. So yeah, that was in the 1960s. Liberace's brother George was actually one such song industry scam poem artist. But apparently he was staying at the Crossroads because he was also working there, because apparently they were still broke. But it was just very dilapidated at the time.
So by the 60s, this place is falling apart.
Not falling apart. It just sorry, not dilapidated. It wasn't necessarily falling apart. It was just like they didn't have shops anymore.
The concept had the
concept had totally failed. Yeah, okay, definitely.
Was it popular anymore?
Yeah, in the 50s, they even said that they were selling. Some person had bought it, and he'd like titled himself as like a crazy investor too. And some person had bought it for $1 million, and then by the end of the year, he was selling used motorcycles on the lot. Yeah. You know what I mean? Not to diss on motorcycles.
No.
I didn't mean to bring this. These were used.
Fair enough.
The Jimmy Webb, noted songwriter, sold the rights to his classic song MacArthur Park to actually one of these con men who was also known to sleep on the floor of his office when he was broke and homeless. In the late 1960s, one of the offices was occupied by a porn magazine that would try out young hopefuls by photographing them in the nude. And it was actually here that unknown John C. Holmes went one day and showcased his talent.
It's a good word.
Right? And that actually led to the start of his career in adult films. A couple other notable things. LA Confidential was filmed there.
Okay.
And Alfred Hitchcock actually stayed there in the 50s.
Interesting.
And to shut this off, because I thought this was going to be a shorter one, but this is just something I wanted to say kind of verbatim. This is what Ella Crawford said after he was let go.
All right.
This was, August 26, 1931. At the close of the trial, as I was coming out of the building called the Hall of Justice, thinking of the injustice expressed by the verdict in the trial involving the slaying of my husband, I stepped across the street and was confronted by an inscription on an old building that had been erected many years past. It read, "It's not your battle, but God's." So as far as I'm concerned, District Attorney Fitz needs not put any more burlesque shows in the trial of my husband's slayer. In these times of depression, it would be far better if the taxpayers be saved the cost of another futile gesture such as that they just completed. In the trial, the memory of my husband was besmirched and a halo placed over the head of his slayer, against the forces of evil and hypocrisy which now control this city, even reaching into pulpits to spread false rumors and reports and into official circles to pervert justice. A lone woman cannot prevail. It must indeed be a dull conscience and complacent public which can view with unconcern the farcical conduct and outcome of this case. Sadly enough, it is not the first, nor will it be the last, if justice is to continue to be administered by such hands. Only a few months ago, gangsters shot and hopelessly crippled an honest policeman doing his duty in attempting to arrest criminals. They were defended by one of the same attorneys who defended Clark. They put on the same kind of self-defense story they used in this case, and a jury of American citizens acquitted the gangsters. So widows are robbed of their husbands, children robbed of their fathers, mothers robbed of their sons, and this is called justice. Ella E. Crawford.
And that was written 4 years ago, right?
That's hilarious, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, apparently that's the statement she made at the close of the trial. That's
100 years later, still the same crap.
And that's the crossroads of the world. Nowadays, there are still people staying there. There's like a publishing house, I think, or something that's staying there. There's a few.
Do any of the shops exist?
The shops don't exist. Like the buildings still exist, but none of I mean...
There's no French store. There's no China store. There's no Spain store.
I mean, I think some of the architecture still lingers around, but everything's pretty much closed. The offices that are open, the shades are drawn. Like.
Now, where did the hauntings come into play in this?
The hauntings that we had were just literally people that we had talked to that were staying in the area. There's a church that used to be a bank that's literally on the catty corner side of that. People would say they would see people walking back and forth from the church into Crossroads.
So there's
nobody tying Charles.
Okay, so
that's why I didn't want to do it on the tour, because. So
there is no Charles ghost.
There is no Charles ghost that we know of,
and it wouldn't have mattered much anyways because where he was killed was destroyed, right? Demolished. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, the bungalow where he was killed, is completely gone.
Okay. So no hauntings or anything of that area, just kind of got a crazy history to it.
Crazy history, yeah.
And the crossroads, the spire there is still there, correct? The
spire's still there, yeah. And I think that's a historical landmark now,
okay.
So I think you can.
Most of those buildings like that, a lot of the area has been taken over by other businesses, correct? So it's not necessarily all, like that whole area that was originally there in the first place is no longer... maybe that big, let's say. Is that correct?
Definitely not. Yeah, I mean it's not a shopping mall anymore. So like that's it. Kind of like the concept, like we said earlier, the concept's definitely been killed.
I definitely think that's a neat idea. I've heard of that area being called or considered kind of the first outdoor mall in America. So that's kind of an interesting concept to look back in California and Los Angeles and say that that's where the original kind of idea for an outdoor mall came from.
Apparently the first one they said was the Arcade Mall, which was in downtown LA.
Oh, okay. Okay,
but that was technically like 26 or something.
So they considered that kind of
that was technically the first one. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
This was like the first like completely outdoors sort of one.
That's pretty cool. Well, my story kind of is around that same time. You're looking at about the mid 1920s or so. We're going to talk about the Oban Hotel. That's spelled O-B-A-N, not O-B-O-N, but Oban Hotel, which is now called the Hotel Hollywood. Is that correct?
1 second.
Hollywood Hotel. So we're looking at
the Hotel Hollywood. Yeah,
Hollywood.
Yeah, because that was the fancy way of saying it. I always wondered why they did it that way, because you don't see that nowadays.
Where they put the hotel first.
Hotel first, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. This hotel was built in 1926. And it's situated about a block away from the Capitol Records building, just off of over by Vine in Hollywood. this hotel was built in 1926, and it was meant to kind of be more of a I don't want to say lower class hotel, but let's say a less expensive hotel than, say, the Knickerbocker, which is just around the corner from it. Obviously, that was at the time very high end. You had a lot of movie stars that were already well known at this point staying at the Knickerbocker and at the Roosevelt. So this is kind of an answer for people that still wanted to have a nice hotel but didn't have to spend as much money. Or didn't have to pay through the nose to stay there. But it was a very simple hotel. When you see it, it almost looks like it's a large house. So it's not anywhere on the size of the other two hotels that I was just mentioning. Very quaint, kind of nestled in between some other buildings. They did give a list of different famous people that have stayed there before, again, that they became marquee names. But you had names like Clark Gable, James Dean, Orson Welles, Paul Newman, and Marilyn Monroe, which I think most people have heard of. But
Paul Newman.
Yeah, Marilyn. That doesn't ring a bell. But so these people are staying here at the time. They're basically trying to make a name for themselves, and they may have gotten their foot in the door, but again, they're not making those big paychecks that can.
So all these were before they were who they were.
Correct. Yeah, this is all before their marquee names, like I said. So definitely a good list of people that have come through their doors and stayed there. You can even, if you are ever interested in staying in this hotel, you can specifically request to stay in those rooms that James Dean and Marilyn Monroe stayed in. They do know which rooms they were in, and you can actually request that. So if you're interested, you can specifically ask for those rooms. So that should be fun. There is a little bit of a history into the place. There are a few ghost stories that come along with the territory of being in that hotel. The story of the main ghost that they really have a lot of history about is a man named Charles Love. And Charles Love was a stuntman for a comedian named Harry Langdon. All right. Now, Charles was a props master, meaning that he's kind of behind the scenes and putting things together behind the scenes, different props, obviously, and things like that. But apparently he got into a skirmish with somebody at the studio, a pretty heated argument, and he returned to the Hotel Oban and got himself good and drunk. Now, the story goes is that he shot himself in the room and died in there, but there's been other stories that come along that he may have been murdered. But as far as they know, he wrote a letter to Harry Langdon and then shot himself. So he did write a suicide note. He did seem despondent after the argument. I believe he was drinking before he got back to the hotel, so he probably left the studio and went to a bar or something and got drunk and then went back home.
Did they ever release the suicide note?
Not that I could find. I couldn't find any.
I mean, that's also like a weird thing to, you know what I mean? Like because every time you see, like, you hear a suicide note, you're like, oh, that's so touching and moving. And you're also like, did they intend for millions of people to read? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so when we talked about Peg Entwistle, yeah, it was like, I remember thinking like, this is grim, but also, I don't know.
Well, that was a very simple note too.
I feel like you should write like P.S. 20 people max, or something. I don't know. That's
don't show this.
It's a weird thing to joke about, but it's like also like kind of like, yeah, that's. I always wonder about that, but because it's not like we're all curious what he wrote to Harry,
Sure.
But I guess that should just be, between him and Harry Langdon.
Yeah, I mean, whether Harry ever released the letter to the public or not, I wasn't able to find any information about that.
I remember researching this a while ago, but I didn't try to go too deep into that, but yeah, I never found anything. Yeah.
So, I mean, who knows? Maybe Harry took it very personally and didn't want to share that information.
Yeah.
But whatever the case may be, they assume that he committed suicide, that he did murder himself. He did kill himself.
I mean,
murdered by me.
It was just second degree.
So, but yeah, so he killed himself on February 15th, 1933.
February 15th.
And now that's also another date.
After Valentine's Day.
Yeah, right after Valentine's, yeah.
Maybe it was a suicide.
I don't know. Who knows? Like I said, they didn't explain anything about the argument. They didn't explain anything about the note. They just said that he left in a huff, basically, because of this fight. Wrote this letter.
Did they say who at the studio was?
They did. I think they said the studio head, but they didn't give any names or anything like that, or what position it was.
Studio it was even.
Yeah, I mean, whatever he was filming for. I mean, obviously, and I was also thinking to myself, why does this comedian need a stuntman? That was my other thing.
Well, no, comedians did so much physical comedy.
I guess that's true.
Did you?
Yeah, Buster Keaton,
like Charlie Chaplin shit.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god.
I guess that's true.
I mean, most of them did their own stunts, you know.
Right.
Because that was what the paycheck.
Everyone
was
except for Harry Langdon, apparently.
I mean, man, he must have done some serious stuff, you know.
But yeah, so he shot himself, and people that have stayed in the room that he killed himself in, which I believe was room 311, they've complained about numerous things. Cold spots in the room, when the heater is on, the room temperature drops drastically. Messing with faucets and whatnot, kind of the typical haunting stuff that people say happens in a room that's supposedly haunted. But they actually brought in paranormal investigators into the hotel to kind of do some research. And when they went into the basement, they were finding that they were getting vibes in there. The woman that was kind of the psychic, if you will, or the medium, or whatever you want to say, she felt that he was downstairs, and when they were going downstairs,
weren't there also complaints of like stenches of death?
Yeah, so that was the big thing, was that they were going into the basement and catching these blasts of, like, they were saying it smelled like methane. Now, but it was definitely a really harsh stench, and they were saying that a lot of times that relates to somebody being murdered as opposed to a suicide. What that correlation is, I don't know. Why they would kind of fall back to that and say, yeah, you have a stink, it means they were murdered. Who knows? But maybe it's just, a foul stench that accompanies bad things that happen. I mean, whatever it is, they definitely were getting a smell in the basement. When I was watching the video, I was a little skeptical of that, because you're in a basement and there's pipes down there and there's things that can happen. But while they were there, they said that when they walked in the room, the smell was not there. And then when they were leaving, or when they were walking around, the smell went away. So it wasn't a permanent thing. It came and went.
That's weird.
Pretty quickly, it seemed, maybe 3-4 minutes. But they were definitely really affected by it. You could tell them, they were like, we have to get out of here. It smells really awful in here. Some people didn't want to go back downstairs again after that. But it did go away. And so to me, I was thinking, well, of course it might stink down there. There's gas pipes, there's electronics, things like that. It's in the basement of an old building. There might be a leak. But if it's coming, if it's there, if it's not there, then it comes there and then it's gone that quickly.
See, that's weird.
That seems weird.
Yeah, because if it was like, I mean, in my head, I remember hearing about this and being like, well, there's probably like a dead rat somewhere.
Right.
Or something, that's underneath a dryer that no one's moved in
right.
5 years.
Exactly.
Shit,
Exactly.
But yeah, knowing that it's leaving, that wouldn't leave. In 4 minutes, you'd still be like, oh God, we got to find this dead rat.
Right. So that was definitely interesting. So they put forth the proposition that he may have been murdered and not had a suicide. Crazy. Now there wasn't any kind of story as far as, well, he wasn't very liked, or he had illegal gambling or whatever. There was nothing to lead. There was no news as far as what would make sense that he was possibly murdered. So again, we're just going off of the fact that you have a psychic who's saying, I'm finding weird things in the basement. They were saying that basically his spirit is usually kind of felt at the top of the stairs and then leading down into the basement. So he's kind of covering that whole area. In the room as well, a lot of people report having sleep paralysis. And for those of you that are not listening, or that are listening, or ignoring us,
hey, right here.
Wake up. You wake up and you feel that people feel that there's a presence either next to the bed, at the foot of the bed, almost even sometimes standing on them or pressing them down. And when they go to move to react to this, they're not able to move. Basically, you can move your eyeballs, and that's about it. People have tried to yell for help or scream or whatever, but they can usually see something and not able to respond in any way. When I'm doing the tours,
like the most frightening thing.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
Ever think about.
Already waking up in a place that you don't know in the dark is kind of spooky enough as it is. Now you add the fact that you see a dark shadow at the foot of your bed and you go to move and you can't.
You can't do
Good
anything.
Lord.
I mean, that's the nightmare scenario. You know? Like, at least in a nightmare, you can turn and run slowly.
Really slowly. But yeah, so people have responded or said that they felt these presences in this room that he supposedly killed himself in. But again, now they're saying that the psychic is feeling energy down in the basement as well. So does he move down there? Was he murdered down there? Who knows? There's no straight answer for that, unfortunately. But I guess that the only answer is that stay away from room 311.
Right. Yeah.
This
was like late 20s, right?
This is 1933.
33. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, but still, yeah. There's so hard to get accurate record of anything.
Yeah, you don't really, unfortunately,
especially as a cop back then. You know, as corrupt as it was too back then.
Oh, absolutely.
They were like, yeah, he killed himself. Let's go to the bar.
Case closed.
I'm taking my friend from Boston.
That was a heavy Boston accent for the LAPD, but that's all right.
No idea.
Throw in an Irish accent, you got the good to go. Here's Officer O'Malley. So he's the biggest ghost. There are two other spirits that are supposedly said to haunt the building. One is a female ghost who seems to be stuck on the second floor. Apparently, they think that she can't find her way out of the building, that she's stuck in her room and she can't figure out how to get out of that area.
Crazy.
Not much to that story, though. They see her from time to time. It might be the woman that worked the front desk, but as far as they know, they think it was more of somebody who was just staying there as opposed to somebody who worked there. However, the second ghost. The owners of the people that work there really feel that the second ghost is actually a ghost of the former owner of the building. And same thing, like I don't think he necessarily does anything specific to haunt. They just see him from time to time. There's never been any kind of stories attached to that second ghost or to the third ghost, excuse me. They did have a cool story about the female ghost. However, there was a gentleman that was staying in one of the rooms. And he was, I don't know if he was sleeping or not, but he said that he turned around and he saw a woman standing in front of his closet, going through his stuff, like kind of going through his clothes, like through the through the closet.
I would freak out. The clothes were moving.
Yeah, and well, he looked at her. He said it was a blonde woman standing there, and she's going through his closet, and he said to her, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" And she responded, "I'm just going through your clothes." And when he went to kind of like, go after her or whatever, she walked into the closet and disappeared through a locked door in the closet. However, he said that when he was going through his clothes, he had a green silk jacket that she shredded. And that was his way of knowing that he wasn't just imagining things.
Yeah.
That he looked in the closet, and when he pulled out the jacket was shredded. How she did it, who knows? But I guess apparently when he went to approach her, she just walked into the closet and disappeared. So
Jesus.
But yeah, so I can only imagine you're sitting in a hotel room and there's some woman going through your stuff in the middle of the night. So kind of creepy. But yeah, so that was very interesting, and that was kind of a cool story. But with Charles Love, that was the other thing, was that they would always say that there was a thickening of the air in the room, and that they would see a shadow. And the other thing that was kind of cool about the shadow is they would always see the shadow of the outline of a man, always dark, but then he would turn rust colored, which I thought was strange. That the shadow would change different colors to it, like almost like a rust color. So I thought that was kind of interesting. That, I mean, the dark shadow of a person is always said, but for the shadow to change colors, I'd never heard that before
at all. Yeah, you never rust.
Yeah, it was accompanied again by the foul odor, and yeah, I mean, basically, these three ghosts, of the three ghosts, Charles is the one that's kind of gets the most attention, if you will, because he seems to be doing all these things again with the smell of things and with the turning on faucets and perhaps doing the sleep paralysis and whatnot. Now, me personally, doing these ghost tours, I've always kept an open mind about ghosts. I've never really personally had a ghostly experience. I've never had sleep paralysis. I've never, I've done channeling before, and I talked to you about that.
We'll probably do an episode on
yeah, and that was really fantastic. But I've never felt that I've seen a ghost or that I've had something happen where I felt that there was a ghost in the room. However, doing the story about the Oban Hotel on our tour, I was doing a presentation in front of the building, and one of our guests was filming me as I was giving the story. After the story ended, we were talking, and she pulled me over to the side and wanted to show me the video that she had just recorded of me. And when she showed me the video, you could see, she pointed out to me that a small sphere or orb, as in the ghost community likes to call it, a small orb came floating out behind me, and then actually floated up around where my front pocket would be, and was kind of floating around me for about 30 seconds or so. Now, I've seen pictures of orbs. I've seen how orbs act. I've never seen an orb on video before, and that was very interesting for me because I tried to look at the different video look at different ways of the video to see, was it light refracting? Was the camera moving? Was this? Was that? Mm-hmm. To just basically try to wash away any doubt that this could be something besides what I think it is. Yeah. And when I looked at it, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a copy of the video because it was such a long recording. It wasn't able to transfer very well and clearly, and without that clearness, you couldn't see the orb. But I did see the orb come up to me, kind of float around me for about 30 to 40 seconds, and then it slowly went away like it wasn't interested anymore. But for me to see that without the camera moving, without any kind of light or anything like that, that was quite exciting.
That's crazy.
I had never seen anything like that before. Again, not even that occurring to me, just watching ghost videos and things like that online. I had never seen an orb actually caught on video. And to see that was very exciting. I wish I could have gotten a copy of that video.
I know.
But very exciting. So, was it Charles coming out to see what we were talking about? Maybe he was excited that somebody was talking about him.
Or the landlady.
Or the
chick stuck on the second floor. No, I guess she wasn't. Yeah, because she came...
because this is in the front.
Floor.
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm outside.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the owner, just making sure I wasn't spitting gum on his front porch or something. Right. But that was definitely on the tour something that was caught on camera that I've never seen and that I have yet to see again on the tour. This is my third year doing the tour, and when we started back up again, I always encourage people to take videos and pictures and stuff like that, but you really won't see that stuff unless you do take pictures and then go back and study them, because sometimes you don't see it at first.
That's so true. Yeah, I love when people just take random pictures on our tour. I remember when we first started, it was kind of like you'd think like, oh, are they not paying attention to my story? I'm trying to tell you this cool history, but that's what they're doing,
right.
It's trying to catch that moment,
mm-hmm.
And I've definitely had a lot of those, which is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, very exciting. So if you ever, my advice to you is if you are ever on a ghost tour of any kind, take a lot of pictures, take a lot of videos. I mean, you can always erase those pictures, but study them really closely. See if you capture. The only other thing that I've seen on our tour was about the at the Pacific Warner Theater, and I'll do a story about that later. But when I was you know what, I can save that for that time.
Yeah, that's a good
sorry
one.
to be continued.
What a tease.
But Oban Hotel still a really cool spot, still open to the public.
Yeah, you can still get a room there, right?
Still get a room there. Less expensive than staying at the Roosevelt. Still less expensive than staying at the. Oh, you can't stay at the.
I always tell people, like, depending on what's playing at the Pantages, it's a cheap place to stay.
Yeah, absolutely.
When Hamilton's around, it's like $200. I don't know.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But that's Hollywood.
But yeah, keep that name Charles Love in your memory, and when you go there, say hi to him. Maybe he'll stop in and turn your water faucet on for you.
Nice. You got anything else? I'm
no,
dry.
No, we're
sweet.
we'll see you guys next week for a couple of stories, and hope you guys will be there.
Next week, Tia Bean, my wife and co-owner of the company, will be with us. She has a story that's, I mean, she's been pumping up this story nonstop, so it better be good. Or no, I'm sure it's going to be great. But yeah, this has been Jameson and Patrick. If you like Hollywood's Haunted or want to know more information, visit Hollywood'sHaunted.com. And then
Book a tour.
Book a tour when we open up next year or whenever. Also, get our podcasts wherever you get podcasts, because everybody always says that. And we're out.